You young scoundrel! You must get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any bungling here.
I put Mr. Earnest's things in the room next to your own, sir. I suppose that's all right.
What?
Mr. Earnest's luggage, sir. I unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, 2 hat boxes, a dressing case, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I really can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
So, what a fearful liar you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I didn't hear anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
Though my duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
Not to talk of Miss Cardew like that, I don't like it.
Well, I don't like her clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why don't you go and change? It's perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who's actually staying for a whole week in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You're certainly not staying in my house for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Well, I certainly won't leave so long as you're in mourning. You're most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I would think it most unkind if you didn't.
Where will you go if I change my clothes?
If you're not too long. I never saw anyone take so long to dress and with such little result.
Well, at any rate, that's better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by always being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage. Your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4:05, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must speak to her before I go and make arrangements for another bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
How is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope I shall not offend you, Cecily, if I state quite openly and frankly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Oh, do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. Oh, but pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on, I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first dared to look upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Oh, Cecily!
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell it to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody in the whole world but you, Cecily. I love you, Cecily. Oh, you will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy. Of course. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes. It will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who's much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say. It was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you. Under this dear old tree. The next day, I bought this little ring with your name. And this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this?
Yes. You've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own dear Cecily, I never wrote you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write letters for you. I wrote always, 3 times a week. And sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them.
Oh, no, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote to me after I had broken off the engagement. Oh, so beautiful. And so badly spelled. That even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why did you break it off? Well, what had I done? I've done nothing at all. Cecily, I'm very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
Oh, what a perfect angel you are.
Oh, you dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, with a little help from others.
I am so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again?
Oh, I don't think I could break it off, now that I have actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
Oh, don't laugh at me, darling. But it had always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. Well, there is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But my own dear Cecily, do you mean to say you couldn't outlove me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Well, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
But my own dear loving little Cecily, I don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It isn't at all a bad name. In fact, it's rather an aristocratic name. Why, more than half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy courts are called Algernon. Oh, but seriously, Cecily, if my name were Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I fear that I shall not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him on very important business.
Oh?
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
Oh, what an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must send his proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax to say Mr. Worthing. On matters of grave importance, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them. So.
Miss Fairfax!
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew? Well, what a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. Well, I already like you more than I can say. And my first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
Oh, I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
Oh, then you must always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Well, then that's all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this would be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. Oh, well, you've never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Well, outside the family circle, Papa, I'm very glad to say, is entirely unknown. Well, I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. And certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes most painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so terribly attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It's part of her system. Do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I am very fond of being looked at.
Oh. Well, you are here on some short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Well, your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also.
No, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. Well, how strange. Why, he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. And how secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of our next delight. Oh, well, I'm very fond of you, Cecily. Indeed, I liked you ever since I met you. But I do feel bound to state that now that I know you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I can't help expressing a wish that you were, well, somewhat older than you seem to be, and not quite so alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak quite candidly.
Pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Oh, Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He's the very soul of truth and honesty. Why, disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Well, modern, no less ancient history supplies us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. Indeed, if it were not so, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who's my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Well, Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I am sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Oh, well then, that explains it. Well, you know, now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. Well, the subject seems almost distasteful to most men. Oh, darling Cecily, well, what a load you have lifted from my mind. Oh, I was beginning to grow almost anxious. Well, it would have been terrible, would it not, if any cloud had come across a friendship such as ours. But now you are quite sure it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
Well, my darling Cecily, well, there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I am afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Oh, well, that's very curious. He asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon. At 5:30. You can't verify the incident, pray do so. I always travel with my diary. One should have something sensational to read on the train. Well, I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it's any little disappointing to you. As I am afraid that I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Wendy, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
Well, if the poor fellow has become entrapped in some foolish promise, I will consider it my duty to rescue him at once and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
To me is an entanglement, Miss. You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
Well, I'm very glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It's quite obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Sir, lady, here as usual, miss.
Yes, as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
Oh, 5 counties. But I don't think I'd like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
Well, I had I don't know how anyone can manage to survive in the country. If anyone who is anyone ever does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, and this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it just at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Oh, yes, thank you. She's a detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar.
Oh, no, thank you. Sugar is no longer fashionable. Thank you.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is very rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. Though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my character, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor unfortunate boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I first saw you, I distrusted you. I learned that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in these matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Oh,
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. Please, may I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you, you may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
Oh, a moment. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
What young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Yes, good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean, Gwendolyn.
Well, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is embracing you is my cousin, Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh. Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I can deny it if I like. I can deny anything if I like. My name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
Oh. A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
Oh, my poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
A very admirable idea. There is just one question I'd like to be permitted to put to you, Mr. Worthing. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest. So it is a matter of some importance for us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. Indeed, it is the first time in my life that I've ever been reduced to such a painful position. I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly, I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother in my life, and I've not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future. None.
Have you never a brother of any kind?
Never, not even of any kind.
Well, it's quite obvious to me, Cecily, that neither one of us is engaged to be married to anybody.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in.
Shall we go into the house? They would hardly venture to follow us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bunburying, I suppose?
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is, too. Why, the most wonderful Bunbury I've had in my life.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to bunbury here.
Well, it is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious bunburyist? Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something. One wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What on earth you are serious about, I haven't the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. We have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Mr. Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algy, and a very good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing, either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. And to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that is all. I love her.
I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that's no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. Well, the butter would probably get on my cuffs. But one should eat muffins quite calmly. The only way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately can tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I happen to be particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that's no reason why you should eat them all in that greedy way.
Oh, Jack, I would have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens, I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless for you to eat muffins under the circumstances. Quite a different thing.
But the muffins are the same.
Algernon, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner first. I never go without my dinner. Nobody ever does, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30. And I naturally will take the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it. Besides, I have every right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence at all that I've ever been christened by anybody. I should think it extremely probable I never was. And so does Dr. Chasuble. It's entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Haven't been christened in years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That's the important thing.
Quite so. so I know my constitution can stand it. Well, if you are not quite sure about your ever having been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off in Paris this week by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said yourself a severe chill was hereditary. It wasn't hereditary or anything of the sort.
Well, it used to be, but I dare say it is now. The science is always making wonderful improvements and things.
Algernon, that's nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Oh, Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. I told you I'm particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Well, then why on earth do you allow it to be served up for your guests? What extraordinary ideas you have of hospitality.
Algernon, I've already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet, and there is still one muffin left.